What it do, y'all? I am back. I took a 2-week long pause to ground myself and center myself in my vision, and I realized that I have actually been going, and it's kind of created this state of anxiety. And I'm a big think feeler, so I tend to process my feelings here first before letting my body feel them. I would say it's like a defense mechanism. But these past 2 weeks really highlighted that, especially these last couple days. So I've been really just releasing, feeling my feelings, crying, expressing, and emoting with people that it feels safe to do so with. So I hope you all have enjoyed your full moon and enjoyed the end of February. Whoa, October, because here we are in November. About to get real crazy in this month, and I just wanted to be back here for this. Before we get into the more intimate shares, I wanted to introduce myself. And I have a script, so this is the first time you won't see me looking back and forth. I'm working on it. So, introductions. I'm Gari with an I. I'm a warrior, wordsmith, educator, facilitator, social emotional strategist. I am a Taiwanese, Haitian, mixed, black, queer, demisexual, sometimes asexual, polyamorous being. My pronouns are they, daddie, daddie, and unk. I'm a complex galaxy made of black holes and shining stars. I adore shadows, and I find that the darkest, most disturbing, hurt, wounded, unwanted parts of us are the parts that need the most love and understanding. I believe that getting close to, unpacking, unlearning, and integrating these darker parts of us are key to developing genuine self-love and authenticity. Welcome to GariTalks, a space I'm cultivating to bring light, grace, understanding, and resources to our darkness. I'm not sitting here pretending to be healed, ED, we don't do that, right? And entirely whole. I can only present myself as I am right here. I pray that you feel less alone on your journey. I've always been fascinated by the sorrow, the grief, and the violence of life, of humanity. As a child, I read a lot about serial killers, spending hours and hours reading articles and passages and accounts about these people who had committed horrifying acts of violence, of domination, of murder to other humans. I read about the acts themselves. I used the power of my imagination to put myself in those shoes and really access the emotions and feelings of the victims and also of the killers. The visceral fear, the terror, the electric quality in the air throbbing in the room, the heart-pounding anticipation between both parties. I tried so hard to understand what it would take to drive a person to hurt another person. Period. But especially in these ways to end their life. I tried so hard to understand what happened to these people who could go on to do such gruesome things to another person. I tried very hard to understand their minds. It was challenging. It was hard. It's so much easier to dismiss them as monsters. Monsters hurt and kill people because that's just what they do, right? There are things that we cannot understand, we cannot empathize with, we cannot build connection to or with because they're foreign, scary, and sometimes violent. It's so much more challenging to remind ourselves that the people we call monsters are also humans who have made horrifying choices. Humans who exercise their free will and our all too common capacity for murder and for harm. This was made real for me when I realized that the killers that I was reading about have families, right? They have wives, they have husbands, they have children. And I began asking the question as a young child, do bad people deserve love? And even further, what is love anyway? This is the concept that drives all the work that I do. What is love? How can we come to better understand what it is? And how can we use it as a tool for transformation? Especially given how many of us have grown up in lovelessness, right? Have seen and experienced harm, nothing but lovelessness, some of us, and dysfunction all around us. And all while being told, while going through that by our parents, sometimes our very abusers, that they commit their acts of violence out of love for us. So it's very important to stop to ask the question, how did we come to know love? How did you come to know love? Did love and abuse exist in the same world for you? Because if it did, we got some things to review, right? Who can raise their hand and say, I was taught about love. I was taught how to love. I'm fully satisfied with my childhood experience. 10 out of 10 would recommend. I would not recommend mine. You know, love is as love does. And if no one taught you how to practice the art of loving, that there is such a thing as an art of loving, it is likely that you are just working with the default programming that runs through your bloodline, your lineage, that your parents also showed you. My passions, the things I enjoy thinking, learning, and talking about revolve around better understanding these things I've been talking about. Digging deep to access the past, naming the roots and sources of stories, both collective and individual, right? Individual and collective. Understanding how the story, this history, how these experiences we have undergone as children, as a young nation, how they have been stored into our psyches. Noticing how we react to these stories, identifying what we have come to believe to be true about the world, about fairness, about kindness, about deservingness, about hope, through our learned experiences with these things. Realizing that by taking the time to unpack, name, and address the things that have happened to us throughout this existence, while hard, is actually crucial to realizing that all of these things that have happened actually exist in a chain of behaviors, a chain of actions, of decisions, of emotions, of fears, a chain of patterns. Being able to see the pattern helps us learn and realize there's a choice in how we wield and access these and use these stories, lessons, and experiences we have gone through. I'm grateful to finally have the words to describe my calling. I've always disliked the way we typically associate the question of what do you do with employment and occupation. There's so much we do that exists beyond the value we have as laborers. About 2 years ago, when I was unemployed and trying to figure out how to live out my calling in this 3D experience, I avoided the task of naming myself. At the time, I couldn't articulate what it is that I want to do. Since I wasn't working a classic 9 to 5, in the office, people were like, you're not doing nothing, especially my family. They were like, you're not doing nothing. And I really allowed their perception of my lack of an income mean that I wasn't doing anything. And I felt like ass, right? I felt useless. I felt like a failure. I felt like a waste of space. Like all this education, all this promise, all this hard work, all this investment of time, of effort, of driving me around, of dreams by me and my family, just sitting there sad and not doing nothing. That's how I felt when I wasn't doing anything last year, right? But in reality, I was doing so much. I was coming to face so many things, so many fragile, dark, wounded, beaten, weary parts of myself. I was slowing down to take stock, to take inventory of who I've become. I was noticing what my inner dialogue said about me. Noticing that though it spoke words in my voice, it sounded just like my mother, my uncle, and my father. Noticing that whenever I experienced deep sadness or disappointment, I would become irate and lash out before retreating into myself again, condemning my violent expression that I had just had and drowning in an overwhelm of self-pity and thoughts of suicide. I was learning about intergenerational wounds. I was experiencing conflicts that highlighted major themes and challenges around communication, expectation, and boundaries in my family. I was allowing myself to really feel into my childhood experiences of pain, betrayal, violence, and fear. I've had a crazy life, and I've really let myself sit with that in these past 2 years, really. I was admitting to myself that I've experienced harm at the hands of my caretakers. I was allowing myself to let go of the idea that parents, family, anyone is all godly and faultless. I was learning that parents are just people with kids who deserve grace and need guidance more than condemnation. I was discovering my voice, surrounded by people who encouraged me to speak while simultaneously judged, ridiculed, and ignored many of the things I wanted to share. And still I was learning my voice, the power of it. I was reconnecting with my emotionality after years of people, including myself, were telling me that I was too sensitive. After so many years of lacking emotional regulation and struggling to feel all of it, let alone control it, I began to let myself feel my feelings. I was learning and am learning to allow myself to feel about the world, the deeply dystopic world we live in. Truly listen to the history and feel it, not just intellectually know it, but truly feel it and let myself really feel that. Because there's a reason why the news is horrible. They bombard you with terrible shit so you can't keep up. But we need to be able to feel those things, and I let myself feel that. I was learning how to care about humans, how to remain open to looking at the things that cause me anguish, while also learning to cultivate hope and to protect myself. Warrior, wordsmith, educator, facilitator, social emotional strategist. This is why the first word I identify with is warrior. Wordsmith, because like a swordsmith, I have spent a lot of time understanding words, the craft of articulation and expression, I would call it. I fuck with words a lot in terms of I like them, and also I be messing with them because once you know the rules, you can break them. I love studying their etymology. I love learning about the intention behind their creation, and I love to be able to use them with conscious intention and clarity. Educate comes from the Latin ex or e, which means out of. Duco, ducere means to lead. So educate means to lead out of, and I would say darkness, ignorance, old programming, old stories. Yeah, that's why educator is part of it. Facilitator. Oh, a little spider. Facilitator captures my appreciation for creating spaces dedicated to understanding and to the exchanges of tools and resources. That's what I'd be loving to do, bringing people together so that we could talk about the things. Facilitate means to make an action or process easy or easier, and comes from the Latin facile or facile and French facile, right, which is easy. Growth and healing are lifelong processes. So when I say facilitate, I like to create. I believe that tools make everything easier. So facilitate, I like to facilitate a space for things to happen. And the last one, and it's my favorite one, is inspired by my good friend Hallie Prentice. I will tag her in the thing. Social emotional learning, right? SEL, if you're in a school context, refers to a process that integrates not just how students learn or how they think, but how they feel and how they behave, and they involve that into the learning process. So social emotional learning is very much about teaching the tools to process, right? And the tools to then heal, right? Because the major part of healing that we have to sit with is learning how to sit to process our feelings. What is coming up for me? How do I feel about that? Right? How do I now move forward with this knowledge? I call myself a social emotional strategist because I'm fascinated by the ways that we feel our feelings, the way that we hold our feelings, the way that we associate with our feelings, how that also then informs and affects and challenges and impresses upon the way that we then interact with others in the world and also just the world around us. I believe that we all have the tools and solutions to improve our health, our lives, our world experience. It's just a matter of taking the time to, 1, realize and admit that you need them, and 2, understand that there is a process by which you can get them. So this month I have a lot of really great things planned. I'm gonna be working. Y'all are really about to see this raw journey of me like half reading things, because I am a wordsmith and that's how the words come. I speak how I write, but the writing is a lot more verbose. So you'll be watching me really go through this journey of figuring it out, and just like really showing up raw as who I am, because I try very hard to water it down to make it palatable, and it just ends up not being who I am. And then I'd be like, oh, nobody really wants to watch this, and then I don't post anything. But I want to post, I want to share, because what I have to say is valuable. So stay tuned this month. I have a lot of things for us. I'm really excited to share, and I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your nights and a lovely start to your Monday.